Hello and welcome to the Visible Women Podcast. I'm Kim DeBrew, and along with co-host Corinne Corbett, we put issues related to diversity, inclusion, and appearance in the spotlight and examine how they impact the lives of women of color.
On today's episode, we're going to talk exit strategies. Have you ever woken up one day and said, I just want to walk out of my job? Back in 2011, there was a guy named Joey Francisco who did just that. In fact, he decided that when he handed in his resignation letter, that a marching band would break out in song and he would walk out waving to everybody and leave. Now, he worked at a hotel and it worked for him, but for most of us, that's not going to work. And we need to have a plan in place to figure out the best way to exit. And we have a guest today that will give us insight into just that. Marsha Haygood is a motivational speaker, talent development expert, empowerment coach, and one of the co-authors of the greatest book, The Little Black Book of Success. Welcome, Marsha, to the show today.
Hello, how are you today? Thank you for inviting me on your show. I'm looking forward to just chatting with you a bit.
Great to have you on the show, Marsha. When I think about exit strategies, I think about them in two distinct parts. One is actually deciding to leave and start something new. And the other part is actually the process of transitioning. Can you tell us about the exit strategies that you suggest for people in the early stages of planning, and also to those who have decided to move on and need to think through the transition?
Absolutely. And I think those two parts are good. First of all, I think that especially in this day and age, that everyone who's working in an organization, everyone who's not an entrepreneur and having their own company, should be thinking about a plan if they are asked or forced to leave their company. There's a couple of things that you should do. They don't take a lot of time, they don't take a lot of money, but you should be preparing for that just in case, that plan B. Even if you love your job and love your company and love everything you're doing, there are things that you can do to get ready if something should change. In this day and age, you should be always networking. You should always be talking to people. You should always have your resume updated. And having your resume updated, by the way, is not just because you want to have another job. You also have your resume ready so that you can remember your accomplishments. Because once they're done, they sort of fall by the wayside. You're on to the next big project. So writing those things down, we talk about those in the Little Black Book of Success. We talk about putting in your personal leadership notebook all your accomplishments so that they're at your fingertips when you need them. And you can put it on your resume. You can update your LinkedIn profile because everyone who's going to hire you after is going to be looking at that LinkedIn profile. So those are little things you can do. I suggest to all my clients that they keep a flash drive handy so that those big projects or those projects that they do or those contacts that they make, it's not just on your work computer. That work computer belongs to the company and they can go in at any time. Let me speak from a human resource standpoint. Anything that's on your computer at work belongs to the company. So if you want something that you want to be able to take home, if somebody walks in and says, okay, right now I want you up and out, you can't then say, oh, I want to get my personal stuff off your computer. So have that flash drive and download those kind of things beforehand. Those are just practical things that you can do. You should be networking with people, and I talk to people about who do you know, who do you need to know, who needs to know you. And you should be reviewing that. I'd say at least on a quarterly basis. But, you get busy. So if you don't do it by quarter, do it semi-annual. just to kind of reflect and see where you are in the process each year. None of those things cost anything. Okay, so you can do those in preparation. But there are also some other things that you can do that may cost a little money, or it may hurt a little bit, may be a little more painful, but you need to do them anyway. One of the biggest things is finance. Now, we all know that, we all would like to make more money. We never say we have enough, but there are certain things that we can be doing to see that if we do lose our jobs, what do we need? So you need to have some budget, and I would say it should be written, of all the money that you're spending right now. Where's your paycheck going? How much is for rent or mortgage? How much is it for utilities? How much is it for Starbucks coffee? Because there are going to be some things on that list that if you lose your job are easy to start transitioning from. You will start making your coffee instead of going to Starbucks. But you might want to do that anyway if you're thinking about leaving, because you're going to need some extra income. And it can come from things that you right now pay for that you may not need to pay for if you're going into a new job, if you're going into entrepreneurship, or if the company is not doing well right now and you think you might lose your job at some point or another. So there's some things that you can do in that regard as well.
I remember when you and I had lunch right before I got laid off from Real Simple. And it didn't happen for a few days, but you said on the way back to the office, pick up some flash drives and start getting your information together. And I did. And I think that is great advice. There is a lot of things that you can do to get in the right mindset, because I think that's the first step. But what about creating a timeline? Is that a valuable thing? So I hate my job, or I want to do something different, and I don't have the luxury of going in and saying I quit, which is most people.
Right.
So what is it that I should do so that I feel like I'm moving forward with my plan every day?
What a great question. I think that there are a couple of things. And one of the things I've actually mentioned, before you say, I'm going to quit my job, you have to decide what is it you want to do after you quit. Now, if you say, I'm going to quit my job and I want to go to another company, as a coach, one of the things I tell my clients is to think about not just the next job, because you might be quitting your job because you hate what you're doing, not just necessarily that you don't like your boss or you don't like the company. So I think you have to think about what it is you really want. And it sounds so simple, but I tell you, I talk to people all the time and I say, what is it that you really, really want? And they can't quite put their finger on it. So I say, take some time. Don't say, I'm going to quit my job by December, but you don't have anything. Having a timeline with no plan is just a dream, So how about the timeline and a plan that you can move forward with? So think about what it is you want. Think about what it is that you do well and what it is that you want to avoid. Now, some things you may not do well, but you want to get better at. You can improve. Other things you don't do well and you want to delegate. You say, I want to stay far away from those as possible. But you need to have those things. It needs to be, what do you enjoy? What skill do you have? And what will do you have to do those things? And then I always say, don't worry about what companies have openings. I say, think about what companies you really, really want to work for. What are the ideal companies you want to work for and why? And then do some research on those companies. That's time consuming. So when you say, I want to quit my job by December, that means you have to get busy. Right now is almost too late for anybody who's saying they're going to do it if they have no plan yet. I'd say you need to give yourself at least 6 months if you're going to do the real research and go to another job that you want. If you say, I want to be an entrepreneur, whole nother ball game, because most people say they want to work for themselves. Entrepreneurs don't work for themselves. They work for a whole lot of clients. Now they got a lot of bosses and they have a lot of things that they have to do. This morning I might be the boss. Tonight I'm going to be the janitor. In between, I'm going to be the IT person. So you have to do that. And for me, one of the things that I did when I left my job, and believe it or not, March will be 13 years since I left. And I'm very happy about that, by the way. But one of the things that I did, the planning was long-term. And we can talk about that, but also I had to come to grips with what are the things that most frighten me about leaving a company, leaving a job where there was a steady paycheck, where there were benefits, where there were perks, where there was, an assistant, where there was an IT person, all of those things that you have to think of when you're going into entrepreneurship. And I tell you, everybody I've spoken to, number one thing is finance, okay? So how much money do you really need? What do I really need so that I'm not going to be homeless next month when I quit my job that I hate? Because collecting bottles is not going to give you even the salary that you have now. So how much money do you need? Not how much money do you want to make? How much money do you need? Because entrepreneurs don't usually come out of the box making what they think they're going to make. There are going to be some downtimes, ups and downtimes. So what do you need so that you can pay that mortgage or that rent and pay that car note or whatever it is you have that you must pay? And those other things, try doing something different. So for me, one of the things was, there's not going to be any more shopping for that nice purse or those great shoes or the new trend and the best color and all of those things. It's shopping in your closet. You will usually find, especially women, will usually find that if they took everything out of their closet and started doing it, and that's what I did. I got a rack, like one of those retail racks, and I'd take clothes out and put it on there, and I'd see that, oh, that skirt really goes good with that blouse that I've never put together before. So you shop in your own closet. So part of that is doing that kind of thing, finances, benefits. How much do benefits cost? Most of us don't know about how much things cost. So certain things, how much would a mammogram cost if you didn't have a healthcare plan? How much would the dentist cost if you didn't have a dental plan? You need to know those things because those are the types of things that you may need to look at in a very different way. Maybe I'll buy a healthcare plan, or maybe I'll go away and hope that nothing happens in this regard. So you need to think about those kind of things. For me, my next big fear was technology, quite frankly, because I could always call the IT person. And now I was going to have to know how to do it on my own. And, 13 years ago, it was nowhere near the type of technology that it is now. But I was a little bit afraid. And it still, tell me, listen, I still get a little sidetracked on technology. But technology was one that you're going to need if you're going to own your own business. So maybe it means taking some courses beforehand. Some of them free. And some of them may cost you some money. So that might be one. But whatever those fears are, you need to move forward with them while you're still working, if at all possible. So everybody should be thinking, what would I do if I walked in tomorrow and lost my job? What would I go back and think about? Wow, I wish I would have done that. And that's what they should be doing before they walk off the job. I just think that those things are real important to do. And most people tend not to think about them until it's too late.
Oh my goodness, so many pearls of wisdom there. I wish I knew about you and the Little Black Book of Success before I left my W-2 role back in 2016 and set forth on my own entrepreneurial journey. You shared so many gems with us. You talked about having a realistic self-assessment, understanding what you really need, and the importance of knowing yourself. You discussed being realistic about your wants and wishes, especially regarding those creature comforts we all have become accustomed to having. You gave us and our listeners sound counsel about our lofty aspirations being really nothing without a timeline and plan to execute on. You talked about the importance of the combination of skill and will. What a magnificent tip. And you talked about exploring what if scenarios in your strategy. What if, what would I do if, and the scariness of it. So my question really is about no matter where you are professionally, as an early career person, a mid-career professional, or someone who has been seasoned in their role, there is always, always fear and risk involved. So what mechanisms would you recommend for engaging and addressing underlying anxiety and worry?
Well, I think first of all, they should listen to this podcast and podcasts like it. I think that you don't need to do these things alone. But I also think that you can't wait until you need something to start contacting people. And one of the biggest problems that I see is that people say they're too busy to keep in touch with people when they don't need them. And then they want to call and see how you're doing when they lose their job. Doesn't work that way. You know, people are willing to help you, but your first contact with them should not be an ask. So start the process, develop some routines that are going to be helpful to you, maybe not today, maybe a year from now. Maybe it means that, once a quarter, I'm going to contact some people who I haven't been in touch with, but I'd like to stay in touch with and may be helpful to me if I ever needed them. Check with people who have lost their job already and see how you might help them while you still have a job. There's some things that we need to do that are really common sense things. And I have to tell you that for me, somebody telling me, I was just too busy is a turnoff. It really is, because I think that we're all busy. So if you can't make time when you don't need something, then why should I make time for you just because you do need something? And I know I'm not alone in that. I'm not alone in that thought process. So start keeping your network up. Start refreshing your network. And I tell people all the time that you can make time anytime. I talk about almost everything that gets done in 15-minute intervals. So if you say, I'm going to take 15 minutes today to text somebody, email somebody, make a phone call, you can do that. Out of the 1,440 minutes a day, you can take 15 to keep in touch with someone. And you will see how big your list will grow based on that and how much you get out of that. It's not just to get, it's also to give. So contacting somebody and say, I was just thinking about you. How you doing? Is everything okay? Anything you need, anything I can help you with? And most people are not going to give you a big bucket list of, oh yeah, you can help me with this, and this. But it's nice to hear that you asked about it. So those kinds of things help you, because we feel guilty when we start asking for things. So that keeps you from asking. And then you're afraid. So that's the emotion But the mindset should be around things will be good because I'm a good person, or things should be good because I do good things for people.
That's great. That is fantastic. I think it's not only the fear, but the point you made about the reciprocity that's involved with it. And there is a panic that sets in place when you are the one who can set in place, when you are the one who has reached out to someone and then you don't hear back.
Right.
And because you think everyone is on your timeline. On your timeline, I need a job right now.
Right.
I reached out to you and you didn't email me back.
Right.
When you realize that maybe that person had asked you for something and you didn't have the time to do it. So just being cognizant of whether or not you give back to others and you check in with others now while you're in work will go a long way if you're ever in a position where you need to ask someone for something. I think that is such gold.
Yeah. Yeah. And finding out what they're doing. I mean, when you're at work, I tell my clients that one of the best things that they can do is check in with people at their job, at their company that they're at now, and go by where they sit, go by their office, because you will learn a lot about them. Now it's time to be strategic versus emotional. So you want to know, if you're going into their office, look around. Are they a dog person, a cat person? Do they like the hiking or do they like swimming? Because they have pictures and they have notes and they have little stories that you think, oh my goodness, do I have to hear this or do I want to hear that? Yes, you do. Because by doing that, you then get to talk to them on their level, on things that are important to them. And guess what? When you do that, they think, oh my goodness, she thinks just like me. You start developing the relationship. You don't need anything. You don't need anything. But then you can go back there and keep notes if you have to. Do whatever you need to do. But it's time to develop some strategy as well. And if you find that you haven't been doing any of that, that you haven't been networking, that you haven't been talking to people, that you haven't been caring about what's affecting other people, then that's what you should start working on. Before you start working on, I'm going to quit this job next week, you got some homework to do. So that's why I say take that time right now to think. First, you have to stop and think. What is it that I have done well? What do I have to offer? What is it that I haven't done well? And what am I going to do about it? And then you can think about what you're going to delegate this job as soon as I can. But you got a whole lot of stuff to do before. And then you start preparing in other ways, the tactical things. If I was working on my own, if I'm going to be an entrepreneur, where's my office going to be? Do I need an office? Can I work from home? Am I going to clear that space? Do I have some of the things that I will need that I haven't thought about before? I mean, and that goes everywhere from pencils and pens and things like that to a good computer system, a good phone line. A lot of people, especially now, only have cell phones. Well, is that going to work for the kind of business that I'm in, or do I need a landline? Will I need a website? Will I need to show up on social media? Just all of those little things, all of that should be planned out before you ever talk about walking out. And so your timeline gets based on all of those things. When do you think you'll have all of that done? Not, I'm going to quit my job and then I'll get that done. When will I have all of these things done? And if you're not self-motivated or you're not self-directed, then you probably shouldn't be thinking about entrepreneurship anyway. So if you can't get a timeline together to do those things that we just talked about, and they take time. If you can't find a way, you just can't get yourself motivated to do all of those things, you're not an entrepreneur, and you should stay at your job until you find the next job.
Thank you so much. Those tips, I think, are so valuable, especially for entrepreneurs, but also for individuals in general who are thinking about whether or not to move on from a role. Are there tips that you have for people right now who may be on the fence about pursuing something different? Any successes that you've witnessed that you'd like to share?
Well, some of them I mentioned. One of them is knowing how much you spend and how much you need. I think that's key, because otherwise you're always negotiating against yourself. People say, I can't take that next job. I can't take the job that was just offered to me. It doesn't pay as much money as I'm making. Well, it might offer you some other things, but you don't know if you can live off the amount of money that it's offering you, because you haven't done an assessment of your finances. So sometimes you'd like the career to always be going up. You'd like your salary to always be going up. But sometimes other things are as important, if not more important, and will get you more in the long run. So you have to think of that. You also have to think of what it is you do well. So you're thinking about yourself. What is it I enjoy doing? Do I want to live my purpose and my passion, or do I want to make more money? And some people will tell you, I don't care what I'm doing. I want this South. And others will say, you know what? I hate doing that, and it's worth taking less. So it really depends on you and the time you're willing to devote to it. I also think that, how visible are you? I didn't always say that, but in this day and age, I think it's so vitally important. Visibility is going to be important to you in a number of ways, no matter what your job is. Who will sing your praise? If you say, I'm a good person, somebody other than your mother needs to say that you're a good person. Who is it? Who are your allies? Who can say, yeah, she's good. I give you this example because when I was working in the corporate arena, I was coaching people. Often people would call me and say, can I ask your opinion about this? Can you just share with me what you think? So when I was leaving the corporate world and I said, I'm going to be coaching, by the time I opened my practice, I had a waiting list because people knew I knew how to coach. I didn't just come up and say, oh, my next job will be coaching. So what are you doing now that demonstrates your skill and your values? Do you have integrity? When I say to people, you can tell me anything because everything you say to me is confidential, they believe it because they've been telling me things all the time and it has not gotten back. Everybody who listens to you isn't your friend. Everybody who listens to somebody, I just saw a quote. It's so funny. I wish I had written it down. It said, the people who listen the hardest to you may also have the biggest mouth, or something to that effect. So you just have to pay attention to those kind of things. So you want to prepare in that regard as well. So being visible, doing at this point your LinkedIn profile. I don't know. You want to know how you show up on Google. I tell people all the time, you should be Googling yourself on a regular basis. Just Google your own name. Put yourself on your Google alert so that you'll see if somebody's written something about you, depending on what field you're in and what you're going to be doing. You should be Googling yourself. You want to see how you show up online because other people are going to be looking at that. You want people to know enough about you that they will say good things about you, or at least neutral things. So I think those are some of the things that you can do beforehand. Don't pass go without doing some self-reflection.
Marsha, the Visible Women podcast, and when you talk about visibility, you are speaking our language. When you talked about who will sing your praises, I think that is a message, especially women of color can really lean into, finding out who their networks are, really mining those relationships for some real talk, for some frank talk, for some great feedback, and for some energy as needed.
Right.
So I love that you talk about first being aware of how you show up in the world and online as well.
Yes. I think that one of the other things that, you talked about energy. One of the things that I say is that you should always be evaluating your circle. Who's on I call it your personal board of directors? That's the close-knit folks. And then who's in your circle? Because so often you are judged by the company you keep. So you want to pay attention to that. You want to know who can help you. That's your personal board, the people who are going to tell you the truth, the people who you'll call to ask, how am I doing, or what should I do? And then the larger circle is the company you keep. And then I'd also say, look at the same way you look at your finances and you say, where's your money getting spent? Who's giving you energy and who's taking it away? There are, you have people who just drain your energy and you know it. And sometimes, unfortunately, it could be family. You need to know who's taking your energy, who's giving you energy. And I'd also dare say, what's your best time of day? Some people work real well early in the morning, some at midday, some are late at night. But you should be doing the most important things and giving your best energy to the most important things. And I'm going to say that also includes yourself. You need to give yourself some time that, give your best energy there. If your routines are off, some people sleep with their phone and it's dinging all night. And then they complain that people send them emails at night, but turn your phone off. Think about the routines you currently have or the habits you currently have and what serves you well and what doesn't. Now, that's just a tip for whether you're changing jobs or not, but it goes hand in hand with some of the strategies that I share with people when I'm speaking to.
So it's really interesting that you talk about just who's in your network and who's speaking up for you. Because I feel like that if you don't know who your allies are, you're not able to necessarily maneuver well when you look for a new job. A
Right.
lot of those allies are the ones who are going to give you a new job.
That's right.
So you need to start kind of cultivating relationships if you're going to leave. So if you are a person, because everyone is not an entrepreneur,
Right.
who is, let me say it another way. I've known a lot of people who've left organizations and then come back.
Right.
So there's a way to exit gracefully. How do you leave an organization? I don't care what level you're on. What is the best way to leave?
On good terms. You're absolutely, you leave on good terms. And you may say, this is the absolute worst job I've ever had. But you know what? Usually when that happens, it's not the company, it's the person you work for or the person you work with. And it's usually the person you work for. I have found it's not the company itself. So even leaving that person who hasn't served you well with, you know what, I'm going to another job, it's not cursing them out and slamming your fist on the desk and saying, I'm out of here. It's saying, you know what, there's something else that came up, or I'm leaving for another job, or I'm going to pursue other, as they say in press releases, I'm going to pursue other interests. But thank you very much. It doesn't hurt to do that. Leave. Don't let your ego affect your income, Telling the person that you always hated them isn't going to do anything for you. It doesn't serve you well. So what you do is just leave on good terms. And that's hard to do, especially when they pissed you off. But leave on good terms anyway, because they may be gone and you may want to or be asked to come back.
I have a follow-up to that.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your feeling on the tactic of getting another offer and counter offering in an organization and deciding to stay.
Yeah, I think you're going to be unhappy later. You know what? Very interesting. If you get the counter offer, there are one or two things happening. One, they knew you were underpaid before, right? So if they were taking advantage of you before, they probably gonna find a way to take advantage of you again. That's one. But two, if you were unhappy before, then you're still gonna be unhappy. You're just gonna be happy on payday. Because money is only a motivator on payday. The rest of the week, you got to do the work. So I tend to think it doesn't work. I think that people sometimes use it as a tactic, and it might work for a little while, but I don't think it usually works well long term. That's my opinion.
Marsha, one final question. If you are in transition between careers, I have many friends who were trained maybe as educators, healthcare providers, attorneys, who have decided to do something entirely different and branch out in a new direction or perhaps in another industry. What would you suggest? Do some of the strategies that you mentioned before still hold? Would you modify any?
For the most part, I think you should also make sure that you're speaking to people in both in that new field or that new industry that you want to go into. I think you should do that. And I also think you should think about people who have changed industry, because there are always some nuances that you probably didn't think of. You know, the grass always looks greener on the other side. They may say, girl, let me tell you what I found out that you might want to think about before you do that. Or maybe you want to, before you start doing, you need to go make sure you take this course, or you meet this person, or you do something. So I think that when that happens, if you're thinking about it, because that usually doesn't come, that thought process usually doesn't come just because, you know, after you got laid off. It should have come before, that you were always thinking about it and just didn't do it. So start meeting those people and talking to those people now, so that if it should happen, or if you should decide that you want to leave, you're already prepared in that regard. Preparation is key to almost anything we've talked about. And if you haven't spent the time preparing, you've done yourself a disservice.
That's a great way to end. So about preparation, having a timeline, reaching out to people before you need them, thinking about reciprocity. It's not just all about you, really, but the things that are about you need to be taken seriously. So you have to find the time to do them, really. Thank you so much, Marsha, for being with us today. This has been such a fruitful discussion.
Good, I'm glad. Thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to speaking to you again sometime, you and Kim. This was fun.
That's our show for today. Look for the latest installment of the Visible Women podcast every other Wednesday, where we'll tackle issues and experiences that relate to appearance, diversity, and inclusion that are relevant to your life. Check out our website, visiblewomenpodcast.com, where you can find out more about the episode and follow us on our social channels. Make sure you join our Facebook group to participate in discussions about our latest episode. Until then, here's to all the visible women out there. Never forget that we see you.